Oh, hey there, people. How the frig's it going today? It is March 14th, one day away from my birthday. Tomorrow is my birthday. I will be 46 years old and I'm still making videos. Guys, I started making videos back in 2009. It's 2025. Are you serious right now? Mind you, this channel here was started in 2011, but 2009 is when I started making videos on YouTube. And now I'm like super freaking old and stuff. And I'm still going. And I find that weird, but, you know, whatever. Anyhoozle, yesterday was supposed to be a work from home day. I wake up in the morning, come down here, do my lifting and all that at 4 a.m. Get my computer all set up at the workstation upstairs. Log in to a Teams message from my manager saying, hey, can you give me a call? The moment you log in, and I'm like, oh boy, what now? Grab my phone, call her up. I'm like, hey, what's going on? She's like, we got a bit of an issue. For the first time ever, it wasn't something I could solve remotely. Like back in the day, we had an issue with one of our sites where all the computers, the network cards, they replaced their computers with these Lenovo P620s. Anybody who's familiar with Lenovo knows what the computers I'm talking about. Anybody who's not, basically they're workstation desktops. They have AMD's Threadripper 3950X. And you can get them now with 5950X, but we had the ones with 3950X, dual NVMe running in RAID. I think it's RAID 0, and an RTX 500 or something like that video card. Not a GeForce video card. They're called the RTX, basically a workstation video card with ray tracing. They're about on par for gaming as a 3050 is, if you look at the stats. But they're mainly designed for workstations, not really gaming. Can you game with them? Probably. You can game with pretty much anything. Will it work well? Probably not, but you know, that's... Anyway, the problem was every single one of the network cards on these computers all disabled themselves due to a firmware flaw that was resolved by Lenovo through a firmware update that wasn't pushed to the computers in time, and they needed to send me up north to go and remediate these, but I was able to do it remotely and get the machines up and running because I just really didn't want to drive up north, because that North Highway in the winter, and this was in winter time, it was in mid-February, that Northern Highway is literally an accident waiting to happen. It's so bad. Between the amount of snow the North Highway gets and the way people drive it, yeah, there's accidents on Highway 11 North all the freaking time. So I was like trying to find a way, and I found a way. I was able to remediate the issue without physically having to go there to remediate the issue. However, yesterday this problem was something that couldn't be remediated remotely, and I had to basically leave and go to another city up north to remediate the problems, and I really didn't like that. I called my manager and she's like, unless you can find a way to do this, and she explains the situation, and I'm like, oh. I'm like, no, there's no way to do this remotely. Like, we're in trouble. It was an issue with networking equipment, so even there's no way I could have walked someone through remediating that, because if they're not familiar with stuff, it could have made things a lot worse than it was. On site, I could probably fix it. And then while I was there, I had to literally, I didn't get home yesterday until like 6 o'clock. So I was like, and I had martial arts yesterday from 6 till 7. So I had to skip my martial arts. But luckily tomorrow is the Warriors weekend of Warriors, whatever they want to call it. So I'll get my martial arts fix in then. So I go to the office, and the boss is, I'm like, all right, well, what do I need to take with me? And like, do I need to bring anything extra? And she's like, no, go down to Fleet Services and get a vehicle. And I'm like, what's wrong with my truck? And she's like, yeah, you can't use your truck. Like, the problem is they couldn't send two of the other guys because they're working remote and they're currently out of North Bay. Like, they're not in North Bay right now. The one guy was down in Barrie, the other guy was in Whitby. So the third guy that could have went only has his G2, and our rule is that you can't drive a fleet vehicle unless you have a full G license, and you can't take your own vehicle because you're on company time. You need to be company liable. So I had to go get a fleet vehicle. So I had to park my F-150, which would have been great for the Northern Highway, and take a Chevy Impala front wheel drive. Luckily, we're in March right now and the North Highway wasn't that bad. It was plowed, it was bare asphalt, still super cold up there, like holy crap. The further north you go, you can actually watch the thermostat drop on the dash of the car like a clock counting down. It was pretty brutal. But no, I had to take a rip up there, go fix the issues. They gave me a corporate credit card and a spending limit for like food and gas. There was no, I had to collect receipts, which is something that I normally do anyway with my personal vehicle. Mainly if I'm doing like road trips for YouTube and stuff like that, like going to visit Bloke to shoot videos of fishing, because I can claim some of that back on my taxes as a business expense for productivity reasons. My accountant takes care of all that. He just tells me to give it to him, and I don't know how much I get back or if I get anything back. But I give him all that information and then he takes care of it from there. And then tax time isn't as bad. So that's pretty sweet. But I had to collect all the receipts for the gas and the food and all that there to submit at the end of the day as a business expense. But I didn't really eat any food because like I just drove there, got to work, lunchtime, I just kept working through it because I wanted to get home in time to go to martial arts. But there was just too much. If I would have had a second person on site, we probably would have got done in record time. But by the time I left there, it was 3:30 and I got back here at 6. So I messaged Coach right away in the morning and said, guys, there's a good chance I won't make it tonight. I'll see what time I get back, but work's got me road tripping. So yeah. So next week I go to the office on Monday and Wednesday. Tuesday I switched my Thursday work from home day to a Tuesday, because next Tuesday I finally go and visit my new doctor and get signed up and all enrolled and stuff with my new doctor, which is pretty awesome. So finally getting a new doctor. After in the August video when I was with Bloke, I mentioned that my doctor retired without letting anybody know, because that's awesome business practice, right? You're gonna shut down your firm. Don't tell your clients, let them figure it out the hard way when they're calling your number because they have a medical situation going on and they get nothing but the do. The number you're calling is no longer in service. That's great business practice, right? Like that's exactly how you run your business. So luckily I got a new doctor that I go visit on Tuesday, but then because I had to go in yesterday and do all that road tripping, they're gonna let me stay home on Thursday anyway next week. So next week I'm only in the office 2 days, Monday and Wednesday. Tuesday, Thursday, Friday I work from home, so that works out fine for me. I don't mind that one bit. It was definitely a different thing having to road trip and go and do stuff on site. The driving part kind of sucked because, like I said, I was driving a different vehicle that I didn't know. So it took me a bit to get too accustomed to all the different controls. Like, yeah, driving a car is driving a car, but you know, on the Ford F-150, I know where all the functions are. I got it down to a science. I don't even need to look to do stuff. On the Chevy Impala, it took me a bit to get everything going because there's no, like you have your standard operations, like turning the wheel makes the car turn, hitting the throttle makes it go forward or makes it accelerate, and then the brakes, right? Your brakes are your brakes, and the shifter is a shifter. Like you got your friggin' gear selector and all that. But then for the accessories, like your lights, your wipers, all the other junk on there, it's all differently located. And I didn't realize it. Like the car had nav, so it was actually pre-programmed from Fleet Services to the location and back. But what I didn't realize was how that once you're in motion, you can't modify the nav system. And somebody mentioned that before. Like I talked about how I use my cell phone for nav on my truck versus having like my dad, his Ford Edge, he has the nav system on the car. It's in there. It's built into the dash. I didn't realize once you're in motion, once the car is out of park, you can't touch that nav system at all. Like it doesn't react to you because driver safety, right? I'm guessing the passenger can't even operate it either. Like, I don't know, maybe there's a fail-safe in the passenger seat where if there's weight in the seat, then it'll assume the passenger's controlling the nav system and unlock it. I don't know. But as far as me being the sole driver in that vehicle heading north, once you're engaged in drive, the nav system becomes completely non-functional. Like you're not allowed to make any changes. You can hit the screen all you want, nothing happens. As far as like radio and stereo controls, all that was done from the steering wheel, unless there was an override. But like I said, new vehicle to me, I don't know all the functions. I know the basics to make it drive, and that's what I did. I just drove there, got the job done, drove home, returned the vehicle back, submitted my expense report, and jumped in my truck and came home, but couldn't go to martial arts. So that kind of sucks. However, tomorrow is Friday right now, guys. And if you didn't notice it at the beginning of the video, tomorrow we have the Weekend of Warriors, which is going to be an interesting event. From what I gather, it starts at 8 a.m. 8:30 is photo ops. And then 9 o'clock, we do our bow-in ceremony. And then there's like apparently 4 mats. So different instructors from different schools with different martial arts will be every hour training different things. And there's going to be everything there, like karate, kempo, hapkido. It looks like there's going to be some jiu-jitsu. Obviously us with modern arnis. Just a whole bunch of different things going on. On top of that, PG Craig from the Sudbury School of Martial Arts, he just came back from a Philippines trip. And while he was there, he posted pictures of items made in the Philippines for sale, like training tomahawks and the real ones that go with it. Training daggers, the real ones that go with it. So I messaged him and said, hey man, get me a hawk, both live and training, and get me a training dagger, because I have enough knives around here that I don't need a live one, but I do want a better training dagger than the one I have, because the one I have is flimsy rubber and it kind of sucks. So he's like, yeah man, no problem. So I paid him off, he got me the stuff. And I should be getting that tomorrow. So I'll be showcasing those items. You're going to find the Filipino tomahawk to be quite an interesting piece of kit compared to what we have here in North America. Our tomahawks they pretty much look like hatchets, except for if you were to try to split wood with it or do anything with it, it wouldn't be as effective, because unlike a actual hatchet from like Canadian Tire or an outfitter, a tomahawk isn't wedged. The tomahawk is literally a flat blade that goes to a sharp cutting point, where your hatchet is a wedge. So the back end where the handle is fat, and then it kind of narrows off and goes to your... Tomahawks aren't like that. Tomahawks are literally not designed for processing wood, at least a traditional tomahawk. There are some people who do make hatchet-like tomahawks, call them tomahawks, but in the end, they're just a hatchet. They're not a tomahawk. And a tomahawk's handle, like for instance, the trench hawk that I have that we train with, it follows the blade rules to be a tomahawk, because the blade is flat and then goes to a point. Like, let me show you here, in case you're not sure what a trench hawk is. Might as well come back upstairs because all my gear's up here. Here's the trench hawk, right? Guard off. So splitting wood with this wouldn't work, because if you notice, the blade is flat. It's not wedged like on a hatchet where your blade comes in and then it tapers off and goes around the handle. This here, the handle goes around the blade. So this follows typical tomahawk rules of the handle goes around the blade. But what it doesn't follow for a typical tomahawk is its handle length. Normally a tomahawk is a short hatchet style. This here is between a long and mid-axe. So it gives you that extra range over a traditional tomahawk, and it allows it to be used as a more functional piece of kit. However, you can never use it for splitting wood, because it just wouldn't work. And you can never use it for, like, there's a lot of things that literally this tomahawk is not meant to do. And being a good camping axe is one of them. This would make for a horrible camping axe. The only nice thing about it is if you need to delimb a tree, you can grab it up here right by the beard, and you can come in and you can whittle with it. You can knock off limbs. Works great for that. But that's about it. Like, it's not exactly a fully functional camp axe. So that's where what I want to do is I do want to get my hands on a forge. and I've been looking on Amazon at the different forges they have by like Vivor and all them, because I now have 3 freaking bags, big bags of cans. I don't think it's going to get me a lot of aluminum, mind you, but you never know. They're all crushed, and I want to melt them down and start making some training equipment, because what I want to do is take the tomahawk training, take short axe training, take all the different training modules out there for axe fighting, and I want to modernize them into a fighting style to use with the hatchet and the long axe. Now the long axe is like your typical wood splitting axe that you would buy at like Canadian Tire or any outfitters or whatever. I want to come up with a system where that can be used as a weapon if it came down to it. Because let's face it, big buildings have fire axes. Fire axes, even though they're pretty front heavy because they have to be, they got to crash through a door, could still be a formidable weapon. But if you're not sure how to swing it, then its function basically becomes that of chance. So like if you had to use it against someone to defend yourself and you're just wildly swinging it, then there's no skill involved. If the other person is a good fighter, they're going to know this. They're just going to time it, wait for you to swing, and then take you down. But if you know how to use it, then you could be pretty freaking formidable with it. So that's what I want to do, but I want to make an aluminum blunt trainer axe, put it on an axe handle, and then just play with the concept and come up with a way to turn it into, basically introduce it into modern arnis and see if it's something that we could work off of and bring to the table. Because like the traditional indigenous tomahawks work with arnis, they work great, but what I find funny is what we train for the tomahawk right now in arnis is not the Filipino tomahawk. We train an American tomahawk. The trench hawk and the war hawk are US military items that the US military hates carrying because they've realized that it's complete junk in the field except for combat. They're better off with a shovel axe, survival shovel, because at least it can be used for different things. Can't split wood with it, mind you, but you can use it to, I don't know, dig a hole. You can use it to process wood into like sticks into whatever you need to make. Like you can use it for whittling. You can use it for cutting down small trees. You can't use it for, like I said, splitting wood because there's no wedge. It's still just a shovel. It serves more of a purpose than the tomahawk because it has that extra digging function. And I believe it was the Germans who were notorious for carrying the survival shovel, the shovel axe, whatever we want to call it. It could be the Russians too. One of the groups anyway from overseas was the ones who introduced it. Amongst the survivalists on YouTube that I've watched, it's become a major staple in their kit because when they're building a home base, the shovel axe comes in pretty handy for, you know, chopping down small lumber, to clearing land to build your bushcraft for your bushcraft base, if you will, all that stuff. You know, if you're building some sort of a standing structure or a lean-to, people have used shovel axe to dig out holes, put large pieces of tree in there, and then bury it, pack it down so that it's supported on an angle, and then they put their tarp up on it, or they build some sort of a bushcraft canopy through using ferns or whatever they can get their hands on while in the wilderness. And the shovel axe does all of that for them, where the tomahawk would be pretty useless. Tomahawk is pretty much strictly for fighting and throwing. That's one benefit that I find of the tomahawk is the throwing. Shovel axe, because the head is shaped like a shovel, basically like a spoon. When you go to throw it, sometimes if the wind catches the scoop, it'll throw the trajectory off and you will not hit your target. Where with the tomahawk, it is designed to cut through the wind and get to the target. So, but then a lot of the military have said like we're better off just to carry a wood splitting axe because the head is heavier and we can penetrate doors quicker with it versus the trench hawk and war hawk. The only benefit the war hawk has over the trench hawk is door breaching, not by going through it, but by jamming the pick into the door jamb and then using it like a pry bar and popping it open, because you can usually blow the bolt on the door. If you apply enough pressure, something's going to give. Either the bolt's going to give, the locking mechanism's going to give, or the actual door jamb is going to give, giving you access to that room. But even then, the problem with the Warhawk and the Trench Hawk is the polycarbonate handle is the weak point. Literally being held on, the blade's being held on by 3 Allen key style bolts on a, I'm just going to use the term plastic. It's not plastic. It's high density polyethylene, which is pretty durable, but let's face it, it's the weak point of the axe. It's not as durable as steel. That's where they tend to fail. So like a full tang axe, or even an axe head on a solid hardwood handle is way more durable than a high density polyethylene handle with a stainless steel axe head that is bolted to it. So, but no, my battle plan is I'm going to make an aluminum hatchet and an aluminum, not a wood splitting axe. Like I don't need a maul or anything. I'm just thinking your traditional axe. And then I'm going to play with the concept. If I need to weigh it down so it has somewhat of the weight of an iron axe head or a steel axe head, then what I'll probably do is rip some holes into it, pour some lead into it, because lead weighs more than aluminum. We all know that. And give the head some more weight, and that way there it's more of a functional, but also while training with it, I don't want it sharp, I don't want it live. So if I do happen to come in contact with one of my limbs, I don't lose them, because I kind of like having all my limbs attached to my body, as should anybody who has all their limbs attached to their body. But anyway, so yeah, that was a fun time yesterday. Doing a little road tripping, and hopefully we don't have to do that anymore. But you never know. You never know in the biz, right? All I gotta say is right now, having a job and what I do or who I do it for, I'm really appreciative, because with all these freaking trade wars and shit going on the planet, there's a lot of industries that are currently pretty unsure of their future. The automotive industry, the metal processing industry, the lumber industry, all of them are pretty unsure in what's going on with the future, especially because, as you probably know by now, Canada has a new government in place. Trudeau has gone. He's out the door. He's done, and he's been replaced. And this kind of pisses me off with Mark Carney. The reason why it pisses me off is because imagine being a guy who's never been a politician or done politics ever in your life. He's literally a banker, an investment guy, has his hands invested into a whole bunch of investing stuff. He's a global economist. He's part of the World Economic Forum, and he is literally he was Trudeau's economic advisor during COVID. And well, after seeing the recent budget, I'm really questioning the fact of how good this guy is, but whatever. Anyway, imagine being a guy like that, and you've never done politics, and all of a sudden, boom, you're at the highest potential role you can be in politics. You skip all the bullshit, all the having to be like deputy ministers and directors and stuff, like being all the lower roles in politics to work your way up, to learn how politics work before you become the guy calling the shots. He literally fast-tracked that, skipped all that bullshit, and became the guy who's calling the shots. And the worst part about it is he wasn't elected, he was selected. Like nobody, like 140,000 people, because it was only the registered Liberal voters who were able to vote for who's replacing Justin Trudeau. And 140,000 votes is all that was calculated to pick Mark Carney as the successor while Trudeau resigned. Do I like the guy? No, because the more I dig into him, the more I realize he lies a lot. But what politician doesn't, right? But still, he was lying before he was even put in, and people put him in anyway, and I don't trust him. He was talking about, I'm going to axe the carbon tax, but then his next sentence is, what we're going to do is we're going to do a shadow tax. Consumers won't even realize it's there. Okay, now you're being shady, bud. Don't like that kind. Basically what the shadow carbon tax is he wants to put a carbon tax on the big businesses, like the main polluters, the steel refineries, the aluminum refineries, the oil production, all the stuff that makes Canada money, and all the stuff that is being tariffed out the friggin' wazoo. So you start putting a carbon tax on tariffed steel. You start putting a carbon tax on tariffed aluminum. You start putting a carbon tax on oil. You start putting a carbon tax on power generation that is not following the green agenda. Because this guy, man, let me tell you, Mark Carney, he is like hardcore friggin' Greta Thunberg. Like, he is probably her dad. I don't know. But he is big time into like, we got to be net zero carbon emissions. And I'm pretty sure Canada is already freaking there with the amount of trees we have, recycle carbon monoxide into a oxygen that we can breathe. I'm pretty sure Canada's already at net zero. If not, we're beyond that. But these people, they just tax and tax and tax and tax, and it's freaking brutal. You know, Mark Carney was also talking about we're going to lower the freaking income tax. We're going to lower the income tax, is what he said. So if you start lowering these taxes, now if he puts, okay, I want to go back on this whole freaking carbon tax thing. Let's say he's like, I'm going to strip the consumer tax so the consumers won't even know it's there. So you're going to put a tax on steel. And my favorite comment is who uses steel anymore anyway? And then he's on the news and he talks to the news reporter like, when was the last time you used steel? And the news reporter just laughed. He goes, yeah, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? What do you mean you don't know, you idiot? My stove is made of steel. My fridge is made of steel. The truck I drive, the frame on it's made of steel. The body's made of aluminum, which is another thing being tariffed. You know, the amount of steel, this house is loaded with steel and wood. He's also putting a freaking shadow carbon tax on lumber. It's going to increase the prices that, like, let's say a construction company needs to put up a new house. Now they got to pay the carbon tax, that lumber, because you know for a fact the lumber mills aren't going to just float that bill. They're going to turn around and move it downstream. So they get taxed whatever it is. I think it was like 300% carbon tax or something like that. It's brutal. So then the construction company goes, they buy the lumber at a 300% extra cost because of the carbon tax. And then they build the house and they have to sell the house at 300% its original value. This causes mad inflation. Why? Because Canada's already at net zero, but you think by making Canada even better, it's going to solve the world's environmental problems? Holy, give your balls a tug, tit fucker. You ain't getting her done. You ain't getting her done that way. You ain't getting her done that way. It's not going to work. But that's what happens when you get these freaking radicals in office, right? But yeah, a lot of the stuff he said he's done, he didn't do. And a lot of the stuff he said about Canada was complete farce. And the more I dig into him, the more I realize he is not good for Canada. We need a freaking election. We really need an election for one reason is he's in power. He doesn't have to go to Parliament and he can call the shots and nobody elected him. He was literally put into the best role in Canada without being elected by the people of Canada. Like, this is democracy at its core. The people pick who runs the country, not just a bunch of idiots, 140,000 people calling the shots. No, Canada is like 44 million people. Not even a tenth of the people got to pick this loser to be in charge. Mind you, the other three losers were pretty big losers too. So like Mark Carney's probably the lesser of the four losers, but a loser nonetheless. So, and 2CV bloke, you're probably watching this and you probably recognize the name Mark Carney. Why do I recognize it? Because he was part of the UK banks. Up until 2020, he worked over there. He apparently negotiated the whole, like he was working during the whole Brexit deal for the banks of the UK bank or whatever the hell you guys call it over there. So he was working over there during the whole Brexit situation. He wasn't even in Canada. And then he came back here, was working with Trudeau during the crisis of the pandemic, which, look at our budget, like look at our deficit. It's brutal. Could it have been worse or better off without Carney? I don't know. But as it stands right now, it's like, we're not as bad as the US. Like, we're not hitting the trillion mark for deficit. But also, if you look at populace versus deficit, our deficit's pretty bad for our population. And that's what I always, like when my friends are like, oh yeah, but look at the US, they're like trillions of dollars in debt. Yeah, but they also have a lot of population compared to Canada. Like Canada's population is that of California. I bring that up a lot, but it's true. I looked into it. Somebody mentioned it before and I'm like, oh shit, you're right. That's pretty crazy. But the fact that what our deficit is versus our population and what the US deficit is versus their population, yeah, kind of makes sense. But still, it could have been a lot better if spendings weren't done so willy-nilly. But we all know that's the way the Liberals do it. They invest into stupid things rather than focusing on the main goal. Personally, that's why I think they need to go. We need a new government. We need one that's elected, not selected, and get back on track and hopefully fix things. Because everyone right now is laughing at the West. Everyone is laughing at the West. They're laughing at this trade war between Canada and the US. We're literally being talked about in every single country wondering what the hell went wrong. So we got to fix shit. But anyway, guys, I got to get to work, so I'll talk to you guys in a bit. By that, I mean on another video. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, click that like button. Any questions, comments, concerns, down below they go. I'm going to try and get some footage from the Weekend of Warriors tomorrow. Probably with my cell phone, which means it won't be with this camera, but whatever. I'll see what I can do. Until next time, live it to win it. Peace the frig out. Sit, stupid, sit. Good dog.